Liam Cunningham is an award-winning Irish actor, as I said, best known for his role in HBO's series Game of Thrones, and various outlets, including the Irish Times, have called him one of Ireland's greatest actors. But he's also become increasingly known. He's actually been a political activist for decades, but recently for activism surrounding the people of Gaza, he helped to organize and become a spokesperson for the Freedom Flotilla, where Greta Thunberg and other colleagues were arrested and deported by the Israeli government for attempting to deliver aid to the people of Gaza when the IDF was blockading it. I've followed his work for some time, especially his political work, and we are delighted to have him as his debut appearance. Hope it's not the last on the show. Liam, it's great to see you. I know it's so late in Dublin. I really appreciate your staying up to talk with us.
No, that's fine. It's way past my bedtime, but an absolute, for you, sir, anything.
I really appreciate that. All right, so let's begin with what I just mentioned, which is the role that you played in kind of helping to organize and becoming a very well-known spokesperson for the boat that was intended to deliver humanitarian aid to Gaza as a way of circumventing the IDF's blockade of food and water and medicine and the like. You know, it was, I think a lot of people didn't realize at the time what an actually dangerous and courageous mission it was. I remember in 2011, a very similar flotilla attempted essentially the same thing, to deliver the people of Gaza food when there was a blockade there. And the IDF actually attacked that ship, killed 10 people on board. You had Nobel Prize winners, Holocaust survivors, and the IDF just didn't care. They violently attacked it. What was the impetus for your involvement in this particular action, even knowing how kind of dangerous and provocative it might be?
Well, it's a moral choice, as it is with any of these things. And I suppose, first of all, I mean, I get asked quite a few times, what is it with the Irish? Why are they so up in arms about their concern for the Palestinian cause? So by way of a little bit of background, I suppose most of your viewers and listeners would know that Ireland was occupied for 700-800 years by the British. But during that time, we suffered two genocides when Oliver Cromwell and his new model army in the 17th century came in, and British figures estimated that between 20 and 40% of the Irish population were slaughtered, were murdered. And again, we had the famine, which we romantically in Ireland called the Great Hunger, and that was in the 1840s. And we lost 1 million people to starvation, and it's one of the main reasons, or it is the reason, that there's so many Irish Americans at the moment, and so many Irish in America, was because we had to abandon our country because the people that were occupying us at the time were slaughtering us wholesale. They did the same thing in India as well. So our sympathies are very much with the plight of the Palestinian people, and therefore, I feel I have a duty to speak up for the people who are being occupied, and I've never been a fan of injustice. So therefore, the lack of real action from this side of the water led to the fine people who were on that boat, including the wonderful Greta Thunberg. I probably would have been on that boat because it never came to it, but we only managed to get 8 people on board and 4 crew. So there was only 12 people able to go because of the drone strike the month before. And your reference to the Mavi Marmara, when 10 people, the people who were involved in the flotilla at that time, told me that some of the Israeli soldiers, when they abseiled on and started the murder, they were carrying photographs given to them by their superiors of who not to kill. I mean, that's how cynical that was.
Yeah, and I should note there, too, that there was an American citizen among one of the 10 people who was dead. He was of Turkish origin, but it was yet another case of the IDF using American weapons, American monies to kill American citizens, that they do constantly all the time. And so many self-proclaimed uber patriots in the United States seem to side with Israel even when they kill American citizens, as I said, done with some degree of frequency. Let me dig into that a little bit, the history of Ireland and occupation and the like, because I do think this is something that a lot of times people in countries that don't quite have that history have difficulty understanding. There's, of course, like a big debate about whether Israel is an apartheid state. I don't think it's a debate. I think it's indisputably true. Many top Israeli officials have said that as well, including Netanyahu's own chief of the Mossad from 2015, who said it a month before the October 7th attack. In the United States and in the West, it's depicted, if you use that word, as proof that you're anti-Semite. But I took my kids, I don't know, maybe a year ago to South Africa, and there's a lot of apartheid museums. And I've thought Israel was an apartheid state before, but when you go and look at the kind of residue of South Africa apartheid, the similarities are so striking, which is why so many South African leaders. Go ahead.
It's not just a similarity. I mean, in the mid '80s, I lived in Zimbabwe, which was an enormous apartheid state, and I arrived in Zimbabwe 4 years after the end of Rhodesia. But I think you're being overly generous regarding the debate about apartheid, because many South Africans have said that the apartheid in Israel was worse than anything South Africans suffered under the apartheid regime there, and that's the current leadership, the indigenous government officials, and including Desmond Tutu and including Nelson Mandela, have said that the apartheid in Israel was worse. So, I mean, if the South Africans are saying that, it's time to sit up, and I think it's proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that that's exactly what's going on.
Yeah, Mandela, I remember he went on this tour of the United States and the West, and could have been, the most beloved hero of the West, and he came and, said exactly those sorts of things. He visited Cuba and talked about how they were one of the few allies when they were in their struggle. So I think the individual country's history has so much influence on how people in those countries see the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But let me ask you about the conflict with the British, because I think one thing that a lot of people know about it is the struggle of Northern Ireland for independence, the use of violence to resist occupation and the like. People always talk about Israel's right to self-defense. I guess my question for you is, how do you see the Palestinians' right to self-defense in terms of using violence, and how do you see that with the IRA as well?
Well, in the case of the Palestinians, it's enshrined in international law that anybody under occupation is under international law allowed to use any method to end the oppression. I mean, that's a fact. And to the best of my knowledge, I think out of 193, I mean, everybody talks about Hamas being a terrorist organization. The United Nations, to the best of my knowledge, refers to Hamas as a political movement. And there's only 35 of 195 countries that refer to that have prescribed Hamas as a terrorist organization. So it's not a given. The West's perception is not the world's perception of what Hamas is, and it doesn't matter what my position on that is. But as regards international law, they have every right to resist an occupation, and we call it the occupied territories. The United Nations calls it the occupied territories. And under occupation, you have a right to resist your oppressor. These are facts. These are not opinions, and they must be respected. And that's one of the reasons I'm desperately apoplectic with the disrespect to international law and the support that the Palestinian people should have to remove the occupiers from their land.
One of the things I think it's important to note about you, for people who don't know this, is that, in your expression, and people probably have this sense already from the first couple of answers you've given, that you're not just a critic of Israel, but paying lip service to their right to exist as a state or whatever. You, I think, are very, very, one might say, radical relative to Western discourse. Not just relative to Western discourse. Not that that's a high bar to clear, but, in terms of what you were even just saying, like the right of Hamas to use violence to resist Israeli occupation, the fact that they're more a political movement than a terrorist organization. I mean, these things are, really out there. And you are a working actor and have worked in film and television for a long time. And I don't think it's any secret that within Hollywood, within Western entertainment more broadly, lots of people have been punished. I'm talking about people of big stature. Susan Sarandon had her talent agent drop her after some mild comments protesting this. There's a lot of examples. Is that something that you ever consider or have been concerned about, that it might prejudice your ability to work?
No, not really, because I take my job extraordinarily seriously. If somebody has the judgment to employ me, it's my belief that I've got to work to the best of my ability. I think that's what a reasonable employee does, to do the best job that they can when people have put faith in you. To employ you, because I mean, I am the product, so to speak. I'm not producing anything. I don't make any widgets. I am it, and I'm very committed to any job that I do, which is why I'm a bit fuzzy about these things, because I'm very careful about what I commit to. But I cannot. I cannot shield my eyes to what I'm seeing, and it's primarily cowardice on everybody's part. Everybody's afraid to upset the oppressors, the occupiers. I don't see that. I mean, the bottom line is, I mean, if you take a step back and be objective about what I do, is I play dress up for a living. I mean, that's what I do. I take it very seriously, but that's what I do. And there's some things more important than that. And just to give you the full picture, I've had an extraordinary dislike of injustice, and the first time I visited refugees was for Syrian refugees, when we went over with HBO and the International Rescue Committee, and we visited Greece and Thessaloniki and Lesbos, and from there the South Sudanese refugees. I was in northern Uganda and South Sudan. In fact, during the last season of Game of Thrones, when we were filming, I didn't tell them I was going. And on the first night in Juba, there was gunshots just outside the compound we were staying in, which worried me intensely, because we wouldn't have been able to finish the show, especially as I hadn't told them I was going. I was on a break. So it's the plight of the people with no voice, who have been stepped on for geopolitics and for the race for resources and land grabs and that sort of stuff. I find nauseating, and it's not it. You know, it's. I mean, we see it at a pinnacle at the moment with the genocide that's going on now. But I've watched it with Syrian refugees, and as I said, with South Sudanese refugees. It's a worldwide problem, but my heart at the moment, obviously, is very much with the Palestinian people, and with obviously what's going on in Sudan as well, which is obscene. But something has to be done about this, because the world order is breaking down as we speak.
Let me ask you about that, because you are somebody who has spoken for many causes, often with some degree of risk, in the sense that, you know, if you defend any cause that's at all controversial, it has various risks that can come to you. I think that's not a controversial statement to make. But one of the things that I've been, I guess, heartened by, and it's hard to find anything to be heartened by when we're talking about Gaza, is the fact that there are a huge number of people who previously weren't particularly engaged in politics generally, or at least avoided the Israel issue out of all kinds of fears or other instincts of self-preservation, who feel like this is unlike other kinds of injustices that they've seen in terms of scale and scope and dehumanization, at least insofar as ones that the West has supported. How do you, and you are somebody who has seen up close things that you were just describing that are atrocious, and maybe it's hard to rank these things, but in the scope of just kind of dehumanization, war crimes, genocide, utter dehumanization, where do you rank this in terms of other things that you've seen in your lifetime?
Oh my God! Listen, it's up there. I don't know. It's up there with the Vietnam War, I suppose. Except this is systematic. That was armies on the ground, and it was uniformed people on both sides. But what we're seeing now, and it's in 4K on TV. We have a live stream genocide and ethnic cleansing going on. I mean, there was just a
mass starvation.
Exactly. 100%. And only in the last 48 hours, the Israelis have said these concentration camps. I mean, even Haaretz, the Israeli newspapers, have announced that these concentration camps that they're building, the Israelis have announced that anybody who is outside them is to be eliminated. I mean, it's an official order now from the Israeli government. I mean, what sort of a world are we living in when our leaders, our international world leaders, as in the EU, are standing by and still waffling and still talking to each other and still arguing about what they're going to do in the hope that Israel will stop doing it, or a ceasefire will come along so they don't have to discuss it anymore. That's what I'm astonished at. And you mentioned briefly about more people getting involved. Yes, they are. The streets. I mean, you have to look at the streets around the world. People are getting sick of it because the masks are off political leaders, the people who are all talk and literally no action. And people are getting really tired of it. The protests are not going away. They're getting bigger. They're getting larger. They're becoming more sustained, and there will come a tipping point. I don't know when it's going to be, but you can feel it. It's getting closer. I mean, I don't know what's, social disruption, whatever it may be, is coming because our political leaders are not doing what we want them to do, and that is to assist in stopping this carnage.
No matter how old you are, I think it's something that a lot of people have become to realize, certainly more so than ever before, which is a good thing, that taking care of your physical health and your mental health are extremely important, especially if you're aging. Now, I can't say that I'm one of those people who are aging. I'm not really aging, so I can't speak to that experience, but I've heard from a lot of people who are aging about the importance of that. So what if I told you that there was a very healthy aging product out there that could help your loved ones, parents, and others really basically reverse aging at the cellular level, resulting in improved long-term health and wellness? That's why I'm excited to share with you guys C15 from Fatty 15, the first emerging essential fatty acid to be discovered in more than 90 years. It's an incredible scientific breakthrough to support your long-term health and wellness. And you guessed it, healthy aging. Based on over 100 studies, we now know that C15 strengthens our cells and is a key healthy aging nutrient, which helps to slow biological aging at the cellular level. In fact, when our cells don't have enough C15, they become fragile and age faster. To help combat that and further support healthy aging, a team of doctors working in collaboration with the U.S. Navy spent over a decade to develop a pure, optimized, and bioavailable C15 zero ingredient Fatty 15. Best of all, Fatty 15 comes in a gorgeous reusable glass bamboo jar, and refills are shipped right to your door. Fatty 15 is on a mission to optimize your C15 levels to help support your long-term health and wellness, especially as you age. You can get an additional 15% off their 90-day subscription starter kit by going to fatty15.com/Greenwald and using the code Greenwald at checkout. That's fatty15.com/Greenwald, code Greenwald for 15% off. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.